Azkaban-episode 21.
"You got to stroke 'em," said Hagrid,
as though this was the most obvious thing in the world.
"Look."
He took Hermione's copy, ripped off the spello tape that bound it. The book tried to bite, but Hagrid ran a giant forefinger down its spine, and the book shivered, then fell open and lay quiet in his hand.
"Oh, how silly we've all been," Malfoy sneered. "We should have stroked them. Why didn't we guess?" I thought they were funny," Hagrid said uncertainly to Hermione.
"Oh, tremendously funny," said Malfoy. "Really witty, giving us books that try to rip our hands off." "Shut up, Malfoy," said Harry quietly. Hagrid was looking downcast, and Harry wanted Hagrid's first lesson to be a success.
"Right then," said Hagrid, who seemed to have lost his thread. So you got your books, and now you need the magical creatures. Yeah, so I'll go and get 'em. Hang on."
He strode away from them into the forest and out of sight.
"God, this place is going to the dogs," said Malfoy loudly. "That oaf teaching classes. My father'll have a fit when I tell him."
"Shut up, Malfoy," Harry repeated.
"Careful, Potter, there's a Dementor behind you."
"Ooh!" squealed Lavender Brown, pointing toward the opposite side of the paddock. Trotting toward them were a dozen of the most bizarre creatures Harry had ever seen. They had the bodies, hind legs, and tails of horses, but the front legs, wings, and heads of what seemed to be giant eagles, with cruel, steel-colored beaks and large, brilliantly orange eyes. The talons on their front legs were 1/2 foot long and deadly-looking. Each of the beasts had a thick leather collar around its neck, which was attached to a long chain, and the ends of all these were held in the vast hands of Hagrid, who came jogging into the paddock behind the creatures.
"Get up there," he roared,
shaking the chains and urging the creatures toward the fence where the class stood. Everyone drew back slightly as Hagrid reached them and tethered the creatures to the fence.
"Hippogriffs," Hagrid roared happily, waving a hand at them. "Beautiful, aren't they?"
Harry could sort of see what Hagrid meant. Once you got over the first shock of seeing something that was half horse, half bird, you started to appreciate the hippogriffs' gleaming coats, changing smoothly from feather to hair, each of them a different color: stormy gray, bronze, pinkish roan, gleaming chestnut, and inky black.
"So," said Hagrid, rubbing his hands together and beaming around, "if you want to come a bit nearer—"
But nobody seemed to want to. Harry, Ron, and Hermione, however, approached the fence cautiously.
"Now, first thing you got to know about hippogriffs is they're proud," said Hagrid. "Easily offended, hippogriffs are. Don't ever insult one, 'cause it might be the last thing you do."
Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle were not listening. They were talking in an undertone, and Harry had a nasty feeling they were plotting how best to disrupt the lesson.
"You always wait for the hippogriff to make the first move," Hagrid continued. "It's polite, see? You walk toward him, and you bow low, and you wait. If he bows back, you're allowed to touch him. If he doesn't bow, then get away from him sharpish, 'cause those talons hurt. Right, who wants to go first?"
Most of the class backed further away in answer. Even Harry, Ron, and Hermione had misgivings. The hippogriffs were tossing their fierce heads and flexing their powerful wings. They didn't seem to like being tethered like this.
"No one?" said Hagrid,
with a pleading look. "I'll do it," said Harry. There was an intake of breath from behind him, and both Lavender and Parvati whispered,
Oh, no. Remember? Harry, remember your tea leaves.
Harry ignored them. He climbed over the paddock fence.
Good man, Harry, roared Hagrid. Right then, let's see how you get on with Buckbeak.
He untied one of the chains, pulled the grey hippogriff away from its fellows, and slipped off its leather collar. The class on the other side of the paddock seemed to be holding its breath. Malfoy's eyes were narrowed maliciously.
Easy now, Harry, said Hagrid quietly. If you got eye contact, now try not to blink. Hippogriffs don't trust you if you blink too much.
Harry's eyes immediately began to water, but he didn't shut them.
Buckbeak had turned his great, sharp head and was staring at Harry with one fierce orange eye.
That's it, said Hagrid. That's it, Harry. Now, bow.
Harry didn't feel much like exposing the back of his neck to Buckbeak, but he did as he was told. He gave a short bow and then looked up. The hippogriff was still staring haughtily at him. It didn't move.
Ah, said Hagrid, sounding worried. Right. Back away now, Harry. Easy does it.
But then, to Harry's enormous surprise, the hippogriff suddenly bent its scaly front knees and sank into what was an unmistakable bow.
Well done, Harry, said Hagrid, ecstatic. Right, you can touch him. Pat his beak, go on.
Feeling that a better reward would have been to back away, Harry moved slowly toward the hippogriff and reached out toward it. He patted the beak several times, and the hippogriff closed its eyes lazily, as though enjoying it. The class broke into applause. Well, all except Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle, who were looking deeply disappointed.
Right then, Harry, said Hagrid. I reckon he might let you ride him.
This was more than Harry had bargained for. He was used to a broomstick, but he wasn't sure a hippogriff would be quite the same.
You climb up there just behind the wing joint, said Hagrid, and mind you don't pull any of his feathers out. He won't like that.
Harry put his foot on the top of Buckbeak's wing and hoisted himself onto its back. Buckbeak stood up. Harry wasn't sure where to hold on. Everything in front of him was covered with feathers.
Go on, then, roared Hagrid,
slapping the hippogriff's hindquarters. Without warning, 12-foot wings flapped open on either side of Harry. He just had time to seize the hippogriff around the neck before he was soaring upward. It was nothing like a broomstick, and Harry knew which one he preferred. The hippogriff's wings beat uncomfortably on either side of him, catching him under his legs and making him feel he was about to be thrown off. The glossy feathers slipped under his fingers, and he didn't dare get a stronger grip. Instead of the smooth action of his Nimbus 2000, he now felt himself rocking backward and forward as the hindquarters of the hippogriff rose and fell with its wings. Buckbeak flew him once around the paddock and then headed back to the ground. This was the bit Harry had been dreading. He leaned back as the smooth neck lowered, feeling he was going to slip off over the beak, then felt a heavy thud as the 4 ill-assorted feet hit the ground. He just managed to hold on and push himself straight again.
Good work, Harry!
roared Hagrid, as everyone except Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle cheered.
Okay, who else wants to go?
Emboldened by Harry's success, the rest of the class climbed cautiously into the paddock. Hagrid untied the hippogriffs one by one, and soon people were bowing nervously all over the paddock. Neville ran repeatedly backward from his, which didn't seem to want to bend its knees. Ron and Hermione practiced on the chestnut, while Harry watched. Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle had taken over Buckbeak. He had bowed to Malfoy, who was now patting his beak, looking disdainful.
"This is very easy," Malfoy drawled,
loud enough for Harry to hear.
"I knew it must have been if Potter could do it. I bet you're not dangerous at all, are you? He said to the hippogriff. Are you, you great ugly brute?